أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون صدق الله العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The verse that I recited is from Surah Baqarah, verse number 183. Last night we welcomed the month of Ramadan when we recited the verse number 185. Today we recited the verse number 183. Both of these verses are talking about month of Ramadan, the fasting in the month of Ramadan, the obligation upon every male and female to fast during this month. And therefore it is a wajib that must be taken care of, carried out by everyone who is capable of doing so. And so the ayat that I recited ends with the concept of taqwa. It says that you may attain piety, that you may become pious. If I can ask those who are sitting in the back to move forward, and I only have about 25 minutes, so if I can get your undivided attention with the loudest of your salawat, please. One more loud salawat, please. The last part of the ayah is telling us that fasting is something by which you can attain taqwa. And we hear a great deal about taqwa throughout the year. But again, this month gives us this special power to adopt this taqwa or to become pious, because we are to an extent ready to do so, because we are fasting. And so therefore it would be best if we were able to practice taqwa in the month of Ramadan for 30 days. It will sort of become a habit. And when it becomes a habit, we will be able to continue that even after the month of Ramadan. So we see that Ramadan is the best time to practice taqwa, since we are already prepared for it. Allah gives this special power. Even an average individual is able to abstain from things which were okay for them to consume outside of month of Ramadan. So we see that the comparison of ibadat shows us that how similar salat, Saum and Hajj and all of these other ibadat are. Inshallah, we will get to the tafsir of Surah Nur in these preliminary days. I wanted to just go and get ourselves familiarized with this fasting and the month of Ramadan. So inshallah, we're ready for indulging ourselves completely and immersing ourselves completely into the tafsir of Quran. So we see that the comparison of ibadat shows us that how similar salat, Saum and Hajj are. We see that in salat, after takbiratul ihram, a few things become haram, and if performed, it will what? Invalidate our salat. Many things that were okay for us to do, right after when we say Allahu Akbar, no longer we're allowed to do so. For example, eating, drinking, laughing, talking, turning away from Qibla, all of these things will do what? It will invalidate your fast, or rather namaz. In Hajj, after putting on the ihram, 25 things become haram, many of which were halal otherwise. If you hadn't put on this ihram, it would be okay for you to smell the fragrances. It would be okay for you to, for example, hunt. It would be okay for you to look in the mirror. It would be okay for you to do many things, pull a hair, for example. But once you have put on this ihram, it becomes haram for you. We were able to avoid these things because we were ready to an extent for a little while. Likewise, during the month of Ramadan, while fasting, we must avoid a few things. Among them is eating, drinking, abstaining from the desires that we have, ascribing any falsehood to anyone, especially to Allah, the Prophet, and the Imams and Ma'sumin, swallowing thick dirt, dust, immersing one's head completely in the water, and remaining in the state of impurity until the Fajr, and so on and so forth. So there are many other things. Right away, once you start fasting, and these two ayat from 183, 184, 185 are talking about these laws that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed when it comes to fasting. So these are the things related to our physical body, but traditions have mentioned that abstaining from these is not enough. So when you stand up to perform salah, if you only stayed away from talking during salah, or laughing during salat, or turning away from qibla during salat, yes, you have performed the physical ibadat. Likewise, if you go to Hajj, you spend so much money, and if you were able to stay away from those 25 things which become haram while you have the ihram on, yes, you have performed the physical aspect of Hajj. Likewise, in the month of Ramadan, from dawn till dusk, if you were able to abstain from these 9 or 10 things which are mentioned in the books of Islamic law, you have performed the physical ibadat. You have physical aspect of the ibadat. But is this what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to come out of this ibadat? No. Definitely not. All of these ibadat, they have the spiritual aspect more so than the physical aspect. Because if you were just doing this ibadah for the physical aspect, it would not hold any value, none whatsoever. If you were performing the salah so that you can have a good workout, you have to stand up, you have to bow down, you have to prostrate, then you have to stand up again. You're doing that 17 times a day. It's a good workout for me. I can stay in shape. For example, if you have enough money, you go to Hajj every year because it's a good outing. I do 2 things with one stone. I'm able to visit a country, and likewise I'm able to perform this worship where I get to see so many people and so on and so forth. You're lacking the essence of this ibadah. Kind of like every year month of Ramadan comes, we start fasting in the month of Ramadan. From dawn till dusk, we stay away from these particular things. And then the fasting time comes to end. We go ahead and we break our fast. And then we get ready for the second day's fast. Fasting is so long for 18 and 19 hours that we forget about the essence of this ibadah. That why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to fast? Why is it like your non-Muslim friend would ask you a question, why are you putting yourself through this difficulty of abstaining from food and drink? Why are you doing so? So same thing we could ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is the need that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for us to deprive ourselves for 18 and 19 hours from any type of these things which would be okay for us to do in any other time. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. The ayat answers the question towards the end of it. It says, so that you may attain taqwa. Am I attaining this taqwa by not eating all day long? Am I attaining taqwa by not drinking anything all day long? Am I attaining taqwa by controlling my sexual desires throughout the day? And so on and so forth, all the other things that are mentioned in it. No, not really. Abstaining from all of the other things that are associated with fasting, and we will mention what are those things, is the essence of this ibadat. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this month of Ramadan is not like all of the other previous months of Ramadan that came. We fasted, we went through the whole month, and we did not have any change in ourselves. The only change that we might have come out of this month of Ramadan is by losing a few pounds. Hopefully that is not the case with all of us. How is this taqwa attained? And it says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. All Quran says so that you may attain taqwa. Again, Quran is not a book of tafseel. It's a book which gives you the laws in 1 or 2 short sentences, and then you go ahead and explore them. You go ahead and put them into tafseel, and this is why we have the imams and asumeen to go ahead and explain and elaborate on these verses. The word لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ has a tafsir behind it, explanation behind it, which is so vast and broad that I won't be able to cover it all in the next 10-15 minutes that I have. But I'll try my best to go ahead and put it in perspective as to what this taqwa is that Imam is saying, or Allah is saying over here. Every year we've been fasting. I asked this question. We had a 2-day workshop for the ahkam of fasting prior to the month of Ramadan. It began Friday and Saturday, and we talked about this. Many people over here have been fasting for the last 20 years. I've been fasting for the last 20 some years. Many of you have been fasting for the last 40, 50 years, or even more than that. You ask yourself this question. Ayat al-Quran says fast the way people before you were fasting, so that you may become muttaqi. We ask ourselves, I've been fasting for 50 years. Have I attained this taqwa? Or I have only attained, controlling the food and the drink and all that stuff. Because the ayat of Quran is not false. Ayat of Quran holds truth and stands firm. That you will and you may attain taqwa. So there's nothing wrong as far as the ayat of Quran is concerned, because the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is kalam and hakim. It cannot be without wisdom. But you ask yourself this question. I've been fasting for 50 years. Am I muttaqi? Am I at the level of taqwa yet? At most, I'm a mu'min. Although we call ourselves mu'min and followers and those who have faith and by iman. But yeah, dil mein khush rakhne ko ghalib ye khair acha hai. Just so that we have satisfied ourselves. We call ourselves mu'min. But have we even made it beyond the state of Islam, Muslim? The first stage is Muslim. You believe in Allah and you believe in Prophet. You become a Muslim. Anyone who utters these two things is a Muslim. From that aspect, that person who just announced the Shahadatain, and from you, there's no difference because you're a Muslim and he's a Muslim. But when you start putting things into practice, then you gain the status of Iman. You become a Muslim. But is it where we stop? No. Quran says, no, you got to go beyond this Iman stage as well. And you got to reach the level which is taqwa, and you have to become muttaqi. How do we become muttaqi? Fast and you become muttaqi. We've been fasting for 50 years, we haven't become muttaqi yet. What is it that we are lacking? So taqwa is attained by giving preference to others over oneself. That's one thing. How do you gain taqwa? You give others preference over yourself. And this can be achieved during the month of Ramadan. Our Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in that khutbah that he gave on the last Friday of Shaban, أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ مَنْ فَطَّرَ مِنْكُمْ صَائِمًا مُؤْمِنًا فِي هَذَا الشَّهْرِ كَانَ لَهُ بِذَلِكَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ إِتْقُ نَسَمَةٍ وَمَغْفِرَةٌ لِمَا مَضَى مِنْ ذُنُوبِهِ قِيلَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ فَلَيْسَ كُلُّنَا يَقْدِرُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ فَقَالَ اتَّقُوا النَّارَ وَلَوْ بِالشِّقِّ تَمْرَةٍ اتَّقُوا النَّارَ وَلَوْ بِالشَّرْبَةٍ مِّن مَاءٍ. He said, "O people, one who gives iftar to a fasting person during this month will be like the one who has freed someone, and his past sins will be forgiven." Some of the people who were in the presence over there said, "Prophet, we are not all able to afford to feed ourselves, let alone giving it to others." Prophet replied by saying that Allah gives reward even if the iftar is a drink of water. All you gotta do is provide a drink of water to another individual. You're preferring others over yourself. We're standing in the line, alhamdulillah, there's a nazm, you have to go with the system, you follow, don't cut the line and so on and so forth. But you see some elderly coming along, you go ahead and give, you keep this in mind. There's reward attached with every single thing. And not just the elderly, even the young ones. So you show respect towards the elders, you show respect and you show compassion towards the young ones. And that's how it works out. So therefore, you see, how do you attain taqwa in this month of Ramadan? By giving preference to someone over yourself. Give iftari to others, especially those who are needy. And then it goes by saying, portray taqwa in your eating and not by wasting the food. And that is another thing. We try so much during this month of Ramadan, but we end up squandering, we end up, wasting so much food. What happened to all the taqwa that we were trying to attain? Well, we have provided so much and we have brought so much that we are wasting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Quran says that He does not love those who are wasteful, those who squander things, those who are wasting. They are among the akhwan shayateen, the brothers of shaitan. So taqwa means God weary, beware of God's presence. That is the unfortunate part, that we are not worried about this aspect. As soon as we see someone is, like for example kids, when they see an adult is watching, someone older is watching, how careful they are for every move that they make. We have to be reminded of the same thing as adults, that Allah is always watching over us, so we've got to be very, very careful. Taqwa literally translates as God wary, beware of God's presence. Taqwa is attained, secondly, by controlling the desires. No virtue is higher in Islam than being free. Azadi. Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. He said, "Man taraka ash-shahawat kana hurran." He said, the one who avoided the desires, the illicit desires, is the one who's free. Man malika shahwatahu kana taqiyya. The one who's able to overcome his desires is real taqiyya, is the real muttaqi, is real pious one. The same way insan owns his or her own wealth and not owned by it, if he can do the same when it comes to the desires, according to Amirul Mu'mineen, this person will be considered what? A muttaqi. He says, al-muttaqi man ittaqad dhunub. Muttaqi is the one who abstains from the dhunub and the sins which are considered to be disobedience towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this month, not only we don't sin, we don't even try to sin. We don't even think about sinning. And that is something which is taking you to the level of ismat. Nobody is masoom aside from 14 masoom. No one is masoom aside from those 14. But in this month, we, by performing this ibadah, in other words, we also join the same vicinity as becoming masoom. Because what is the translation of ismat? Translation of ismat as, when Imam was asked, Imam, how do you abstain from all of these things? Imam said, we don't even think about it. Forget about doing it. We don't even think about doing it. So ismat is not only that you don't do that sin, but you don't even think about committing that sin. And right away people ask, Imam, how are you able to not even think about committing a sin? Right away Imam gave an example. He said, imagine if you were hungry and there was food, rotten food sitting in the garbage. Imam gives sort of similar example. I'm just trying to paraphrase it in my words so that it makes, it is relevant to us. He said, imagine rotten food which has been sitting in the garbage for a couple of days. No matter how hungry you are, you won't touch that food. You won't even think about eating that food. Yeah, if it becomes really life and death situation, it might pass through your mind. But initially speaking, you won't even think about eating and touching that food. Imam actually gave example of something even more, even worse than that, which we can't even imagine thinking about eating it. But nonetheless, you got the point. He said, would you eat that thing? He said, no way. Not only I won't eat, I won't even think about eating. Imam says, similarly, we understand the effects of sins. So not only we don't commit sins, we don't even think about committing sins. Similar effect. So therefore we see that taqwa is attained by controlling the desires. Thirdly, the taqwa is attained by controlling the tongue, closing the eyes and the ears from haram, and showing compassion towards the orphan. Again, referring back to what Prophet said in that last khutbah of Shaban, he said, وَاحْفَظُوا أَلْسِنَتَكُمْ وَغُضُّوا عَمَّا لَا يَحِلُّ النَّظَرُ إِلَيْهِ أَبْصَارَكُمْ وَعَمَّا لَا يَحِلُّ الْإِسْتِمَاعُ إِلَيْهِ أَسْمَاعَكُمْ وَتَحَنَّنُوا عَلَىٰ أَيْتَامِ النَّاسِ يُتَحَنَّنْ عَلَىٰ أَيْتَامِكُمْ. He said, guard your tongues, close your eyes to that which is not permissible for your sight. Close your ears to that which is forbidden to hear. Show compassion to the orphans of people, so compassion may be shown to your orphans. Again, we see the third category which we are mentioning over here. The ayat of Quran stands firm. Fast, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Perform this fast, and so that you may attain the level of taqwa, you may become muttaqi. How do we become muttaqi? All related to this month of Ramadan. Guard your tongue. Yes, when you practice guarding this tongue for 30 days while you're fasting, I bet you the 31st day when you're not fasting, you'll be able to guard this tongue. When you guard your ears from listening to things which you should not put in your ears, I bet after 30 days of practicing, 31st day you won't put it in your eye. Similarly, with your eyes, things which you're not supposed to see, if you're able to guard with respect to Ramadan, with respect to this fast, that I'm fasting, I should not do this. If you practice this for 30 days, the 31st day when Ramadan is over, you will have malaka, control over it. You won't do it. So that's the third thing which is being mentioned where taqwa is translated as differently in Quran. Fear, different things that we fear in Quran, fear in our life, it has been mentioned as fear in Quran. For example, it says, ittaqullah, fear Allah. Yes, there is a fear that we must have of Allah. Kind of like the example that we were given as a child who in the presence of an adult, make sure that he does not do anything which angers the adult who's around. You and I are the same way. But you need to realize that Allah is always watching. This kid might get a leash sometime or might get some time off because when not all the time the adults are watching over him. But you and I should understand that Allah, alam ya'lam bi anna Allah ya'lam. Do you not know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always watching? So when we have this concept of Him always watching us, right away fear. Secondly, it says, ittaqu yawman la tajzi nafsun an nafsin shay'a. Fear the day. Which day? The day of judgment. When no nafs will be able to, help another nafs. Third, in Al Imran said, taqun nar allati uiddat lil kafirin. Fear the fire which has been prepared for kuffar. Fourthly, he says, اتقوا فتنة لا تصيبن الذين ظلموا منكم خاصة. Fear the fitna. That is also important. Fear the fitna and then suppress it by expansion. From these we can attain and understand taqwa. Taqwa means fear, safeguarding from sins and disobedience. Interestingly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala counts himself as among the muttaqeen. He himself is calling him to be a muttaqi. What else? Do you not want to adopt the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do you not want to adopt the akhlaq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He says in Surah Muddathir, verse number 56, هُوَ أَهْلُ التَّقْوَى وَأَهْلُ الْمَغْفِرَةِ. It is Allah, He is alone worthy of being feared, and He is the source of forgiveness. Salawat Muhammad wa We have a few more minutes for namaz. Please move forward if you allow us. A few more minutes, inshallah, we'll conclude. Our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, when he was asked in regards to the tafsir of taqwa, he said, فَقَالَ أَنْ لَا يَفْقِدَكَ اللَّهُ حَيْثُ أَمَرَكَ وَلَا يَرَاكَ حَيْثُ نَهَاكَ. That when he was asked, Imam said, the tafsir of taqwa, that أَنْ لَا يَفْقِدَكَ اللَّهُ, that Allah should not find you absent حَيْثُ أَمَرَكَ, from the place that He has ordered you to be. وَلَا يَرَاكَ حَيْثُ نَهَاكَ, and He should not see you present at a place where He has made it forbidden for you. A lot of time, this opportunity arises for us. This is the place where Allah has ordered us to be. Masjid, Imam Barga, Husainiya, where we come in and commemorate these different events, and especially in the month of Ramadan. This is where Allah has ordered you to be. You should not be absent from this place. But there are a lot of places of lahv and nar that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us to stay away from. This is, according to Imam alayhi sixth Imam, this is the definition of taqwa. As long as you can abstain from being in those places where Allah has made it forbidden to you, and you are present in those places where Allah has ordered you to be, you are acting according to taqwa. He did not go ahead and count different things or different levels. He just explained it in one ibarat, in one sentence. Once our sixth Imam went to a gathering. A person in the gathering asked for a glass of water. Instead, the host gave him a glass of wine. Imam instantly got up, and as he was leaving, he said, "This is not a place for me, because Allah does not want me to be in a place which He does not approve." A lot of times we get this question as well. Can I eat in this restaurant? Can I eat in that restaurant where this is being served, which is that is being served? Yes, it might be okay if you asked a faqih because you're eating the halal food that is being served over there. But if you want to do the pairavi of our sixth Imam, you want to follow exactly the footstep of our sixth Imam. He was in a gathering where wine was served to another individual. Imam got up and left, saying a message, giving us a message that Allah has or disapproved this mahfil. Therefore, I do not want to be part of this mahfil. Maraj might give you fatwa that yes, it is okay to eat from there, but should not sit on the table where alcohol is being served. In the month of Ramadan, we don't eat and drink, so we can easily avoid such gatherings as it is, because we don't have to eat anyway, so we don't have to go to these different places where such things are being served. Sometimes we are forced to go into, and that is another aspect, that why should you be forced to going into such gatherings? If one can avoid gatherings of entertainment during Ramadan, respecting the month of Ramadan, respecting that this person is fasting, they can do it afterwards as well. Last hadith, and inshallah we will conclude. Our Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Tamamut taqwa. And again, look at the encompassing hadith of Rasul. When asked about taqwa, he said, Tamamut taqwa. He did not say part of taqwa, partial taqwa, a little bit of taqwa, 25% of taqwa. He said, Tamamut taqwa. Tamam taqwa, everybody understands the word tamam over here. All of taqwa is in what? أن تتعلم ما جهلت وتعمل بما علمت. Subhanallah. In one sentence, he covered the entire taqwa. He said what? The reality and peak of taqwa is to learn everything you don't know. Because the ignorance, jahl, is not an excuse which will work on the day of judgment. Allah will say to these people who will plead saying that we were ignorant, He said, Allah ta'allamta, why didn't you learn? And then second thing, whatever you have learned, act according to that. That is the problem that we have, brothers and sisters, that we know a great deal, yet we fail to act on that. And that's why it is even a bigger responsibility of the scholars because of their knowledge. Because they possess this knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that 70 ignorant will be forgiven until one alim is forgiven. Why? Because you knew. And it's not just the alim with the turban on the head. Anyone who has the ilm, anyone who possesses the knowledge. So tomorrow on the day of judgment, 70 ignorant will be forgiven. So does that mean we should remain ignorant? So that we will be among those 70? No. Prophet said if you want to reach the highest level of taqwa, the highest level of taqwa is to learn that you do not know, which you do not know, and act according to that which you have already possessed the knowledge of. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to be able to follow these teachings of Ma'asumin alayhi salatu wasalam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq in this month of Ramadan to be able to practice taqwa at its highest peak. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it becomes a habit of ours that when we come out of the month of Ramadan, we are still steadfast on the path of taqwa. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the zuhur of our awaited Imam and make us among the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima.